Welcome, welcome to another edition of the Growth Seekers Leadership Mastermind, where we talk all things leadership. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of different thoughts on leadership. One of the way that we look at it here is that leadership is an interaction where influence happens. And how it all really begins is that we begin by first leading ourselves, influencing ourselves to take the actions that we know we need to take in order to have the lives that we want, and then to influence others to take the actions that they need to take in order to have the lives that they want. And so every week we take different topics, and then what we do is we open it up to the mastermind here, and we allow everybody to have their insights on it. And we've been doing this for a while, and we've now taken the opportunity to now share it with more people. And so, if you're watching this in video, just say you're very fortunate because there's a lot of wise people on here and a lot of experience, and the mastermind concept and idea works really well, and we'd like to share that with you. So when we talk about the topic that we're going to be talking about today, in regards to leadership, is progress over perfection. And one of the things that I do as in my day job is I'm a performance coach, and I work with high performing athletes. And in that area, there's a lot of athletes who are often striving for perfection. And one of the challenges with that is that when you're striving for perfection, you can easily have your energy, and you could easily get into stress reaction when things aren't going your way. And progress is also something interesting because progress is how you perceive progress, right? And so today we're going to have an opportunity. I'm setting the table on this. I've got some really intelligent and great leaders here with me today. But to start off with, I'd like to introduce Mark Santos. He's my co-facilitator on this. And so Mark, what are your opening thoughts on progress over perfection?
Yeah, good morning, all. What really stands out for me on this particular topic is the impact that I've witnessed perfectionism and those that seek perfection, the mental toll that it takes on them. And it is incredibly counterproductive, I feel, to seek perfection versus progress. Or another word that I like is precision. But the difference between progress and desiring precision versus perfection, I think it's much more mentally healthy, and it's something that is attainable, achievable, but perfection is not. I don't think anybody here is perfect, maybe with the exception of Jesus. But the point being is, I don't think any of us are able to be perfect, but I think we can all seek progress and we can all seek precision.
Yeah, and I think what's really important too is that thinking about the idea of perfectionism, right, is that when we think about mastery in whatever role we're endeavoring to do, whether it's at work, whether it's in our own homes and what have you, is that mastery over that role and being really effective at that role often goes through periods of time when we're not our best, when we make errors, when we have days where we feel like failures. All that is all part of the journey to mastery, and even mastery itself is not an outcome, it's a process. So this idea of perfectionism, it creates this idea that there's something outside of ourselves that we need to attain. And one of the things is that when we really think about it, there is no over there. We're always in the now. Right? It's always now. Like, you're never going to have your best day outside of this place called the now. You're never going to have your worst day outside of the place called the now. And even those two things are also based on the perception that we have about what's happening, right? So yeah, so I think that really thinking about perfectionism, it actually becomes a bit of an outcome that we project outside of ourselves that we need to have in our lives in order to feel significant, worthy enough. And that's why I think that it can really be a block to your progress, to getting to becoming the person that you want to become. But I know this has inspired some thoughts here from Wolfgang. So Wolfgang and then Miriam, what are your thoughts?
Well, what you said before is progress is what do we see as progress? Actually, it's also perfection is how we see it. And when I was listening to you, it came to me one term, perfectly imperfect. And when I think about nature, nature is so perfect, imperfect, because the only goal is to become better. So it's not about being in a certain way, it's about to survive. So, and nature is totally, there is even the spiral, there is like all this, um, um, how you say, length relative to the other length, like everything is perfect, but the way it's designed is not because of it is it's coming from an experience rather than from a thinking. Nature is purely experimental. Nobody's, I mean, even when we think of God, then this is not something what is like making a plan and thinking about it. Is like it's an evolution, as you said, Walter. It's a process. It's a process, and and even the process has just a moment. There is so many paradoxons. The process in reality is an endless line of moments. So in the moment, you cannot see a process because a moment is one thing, one moment, one picture. So it's so unthinkable actually. The question is we don't even have to think about imperfect, perfectly imperfect describes the impossibility to think about it because it doesn't make any sense. And at the same time, I think it can relax us. And that is, I guess, the place where I think either being perfect or only being in progress can be really stressful. Being driven by something. I progress. I think both they belong to each other. They have a deep belonging to each other. That comes to my mind. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Miriam, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I like what Wolfgang was says, perfectly imperfect. I just want to share my experience as a business owner. When you are doing, you believe in perfectionism, because I expect more from myself. That's what it was. I never was satisfied with everything I was doing. So I expect the same from others. So that is the danger of, because everybody is perfect in their own way. Everybody is doing in their own way. And that causes disappointment in us when they're not doing what we think is a perfect way to do things, and you get disappointed. And that kind of put a gap between you and the people that you actually need to connect with and you want to connect with. So I learned that lesson. And of course, I was ignorant into that, when I had my business. And so we got to be very careful about when we are connecting with other people to be at service at them rather than you don't want to be like, coach, or you don't want to be a teacher. I was trying to help them. It's not that I wasn't helping them, but I thought my way was the best way. My way was the perfect way. So another thing is, so when you believe in perfectionists, you are never happy because you never, live up to that standards that you have in your life. And then we already know that being happy and having a joy in our personal daily life, it's a very crucial thing. But there is also the difference between being, some people perhaps they mistaken being efficient than being perfect. Yeah, we can be efficient and we can do things in more efficient way, which is like right now what we're learning, in our businesses, in our leadership, to do things in a more efficient way. But that's not perfectionist. Even efficient way could grow and could evolve and change. So I was always told that, oh, you're very efficient. But I think the back of their mind was like something different. I was bossy. No, that's all I wanted to share.
Great. Mark.
Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing. This topic is really near and dear to my heart. What I want to just start with is that I think perfectionism comes from a positive intention, like you were describing earlier, Miriam. There's you operate your business, or you're doing your activity or doing your profession, whatever it is, relationships, and you desire to want to be the best at what you can do. You want to show up and perform at your best.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where perfectionism is grounded in the right intention, but and the focus there is on a performance-based mindset. At least it is perceived as that when you start. But Walter, you highlighted something really, really important, which is if you're completely outcome focused rather than progression or progress focused, right? That's when I think that's the razor's edge and the double-edged sword that you can really fall into. And that's where you run the risk of compromising your emotional well-being. Because if you set a standard that is impossible to achieve, then you're forever putting yourself into a losing position. And that's not healthy for your mindset, which then has a negative impact on your performance. So then it sets up a downward spiral where it's impossible to achieve the intention because you're not performing at your best. Therefore, you cannot be perfect. So I think another healthy aspect of perfectionism is the dissatisfaction aspect of it. Because dissatisfaction inspires growth, it inspires creativity, it inspires you to push forward. But again, if you don't recognize what Wolfgang said, which is being perfectly imperfect, and recognizing that the objective is progress, not perfectionism, if you do not, or if you can't accept that, then you can run the risk rather, of falling into ego delusion. And it becomes an egoic pursuit. And I think that's where you run the risk of falling into all sorts of different pathologies. But the point being, and this is the last point that I wanted to highlight, is that I really love what Wolfgang said. There's a beautiful song about this as well, but being acceptance of being perfectly imperfect is the perfect paradox to put yourself in, where you're both dissatisfied and yet appreciate the progress that you're making. And at least that's what I've come to the conclusion on thus far in my journey. But thank you, I'm complete.
So just before we go to your Gallum, I want to share, I was a special needs dad for roughly 20 years. I had a young son who we got at the age of 14 months, and he had a chromosome deletion. So as he was growing up, there was a lot of disabilities that showed up, natural ones and unnatural ones from the treatments that he was given and what have you. They told him that he's only going to live till he was 10 years old, roughly. That's what they estimated. He lived to almost 21. And they said things like, "Oh, he's never going to use his hands. He's always going to use his feet as his hands." They're trying to put all their predictions on him. He became a really cool drummer, the way he drummed on his little drum, and he had such a gentle and incredible spirit about him that he taught me about being perfectly imperfect. He did not have he was not cognitive enough to spend a lot of time in the past and the future. And so when we talk about it, and Mark talked about the ego needs the past and the future to exist, because in the present moment, that's where we are. And the ego tries to make us feel that we're better than we are or less than we are. And that's where the danger lies in it, right? Where if you're going for perfection, you're going to feel sometimes better than you think you are or less than you think you are. And both of those things are detrimental to creating connection with other people. Because, yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, think about this. It's hard being around an egotistical, arrogant person, but it's also difficult being around someone that's in a pity party. Both are very draining. And in leadership, if our goal is to, first of all, influence ourselves to take action, well, that's the difference between being in our power or forcing something to happen. And so when we are leading ourselves by force, we may be trying to force things that aren't flowing. Because I often say, if it's got flow to go, and if it doesn't have flow, it's got to go, right? So we sometimes follow flow because we're trying to force something to happen because we have this outcome that we need to reach. And there's sometimes where we give up because we don't think we have what it takes to reach that perfection that we're looking for. So when we talk about the ego is there constantly because it's so much, it's kind of enmeshed in our version of who we think we are. Because if we were to talk to anybody here, who are you? They'd go back to where they were born, their family, their values, everything, right? And so what would happen is that their thought world would give us who they thought they were, right? And that's why it's so hard, because perfectionism is driven by a lot of things. Some of the wounds that we had in our past can force us to want to be perfect because we've been told that we're not. The one thing that I do when I work with anyone, the first thing I tell them is, you're not broken. I'm not here to fix you. And quite often the physical response that I get, and I know Wolfgang will appreciate this, it's a big relief. Like people, it's almost like just those words, you're not broken. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to support you. And all of a sudden, it's just something that comes off that, right? So when we talk about that, it's really interesting. The ego is so enmeshed into the perfectionism. We also, the idea of being perfectly imperfect, really, it's that whole idea that if perfection was the gold at the end of the rainbow, right? We always talk about the gold at the end of the rainbow. Reaching that goal is the perfectionism, right? Who we become along the way is the progress. right? And if you really think about what success would mean to you, even if you have an achievement or an accomplishment that you'd like, it's more of not only achieving those things, but it's more of how you would feel once you actually got there, right? And the whole idea, and all these manifestors always talk about, if you want to have something, yeah, visualize it, see it, but then be that person now. Strive to have those feelings, to act and behave within your values, and who you're going to become once you do that. Now, your Gallum had her hand up, so I'd like to kind of see what her thoughts are, and then Wolfgang.
My thought, perfection. Well, I do have that part, but it's a special. I only performed it and discovered it actually when I was doing my drawing. But my husband, so mine is a relationship. My husband, he is the person who wants things in order. And for me, I like things like I don't need it to have in order for me to be able to function. So, but for him, it needs to be like precise, organized, and everything. And so, what I tell him is like my job to be here is to come in his world, shake his brain a little bit because it's too order. But the funny thing is, I need that part for me, actually, for me to do the type of job that I do. But I'm grateful for his part because it showed me actually where, my type of brain or my personality is. And I have, when it comes to like with my performance for work, it does take a little bit more from me because the type of job I do, it requires order, organize, and being able to analyze it. So for when it comes to working with other people, it helps me to have that person who is opposite of me. But it's fun with him. But for other people, it does require a little bit more patience because I just cannot tell them like I'm here to shake your brain. So that's my journey. But I do definitely appreciate the other part of those people that are more organized and perfect with their path.
Awesome. Wolfgang, and then back to Mark.
I think it's not an either or. I think it's a question of time. I know myself being very organized, and I know myself being less organized. And somehow there is times when I cannot take it, and then I have to organize something. And then there is times I can more easily accept less organization. And I think maybe there is people having a higher level of need to organize, and then there is maybe a lower need. But what I can observe on me, that I can be very one side, and then there is a cycle. There is like a wave in my life. And what I can see is that these waves over time became more stable. Maybe the duration, somehow the duration is shifting. And this is depending on I think it comes with a maybe age. I don't know. It's just a possibility. But for me, it's not an either or, it's a when and how is it currently.
Okay. Mark. You're on mute, so you're saying something really profound. We're just missing it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really appreciating what everybody's sharing so far. Well, I just want to highlight a couple of things. One thing, Walter, you said, I think is really important to highlight is this idea that perfection is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And we all know it's impossible to get to that pot, right? So if you base your happiness and your well-being and your ego and everything based on achieving that impossible thing, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So that's the unhealthy part of this perfectionism, which I've seen, unfortunately, devastate people's lives. But the flip side of that is this progress is this journey towards that perfectionism. And I think the healthy word that really resonates with me, at least, and I'd love to hear what everybody else has to think about this, but the healthy word in this is the desire and seeking of precision. And the reason why I like this word is I have a lot of master carpenters in my family. They'll build houses, do finishing work, build incredible decorative pieces of furniture. And watching them do their work, like if you've ever watched a master carpenter build a piece of what is going to be future antique furniture, right? And the level of precision and accuracy that goes into creating a work of art like that, it is truly remarkable to see somebody care for a piece of wood with that much detail. It could take 6 months to a year to build this one piece of furniture. And the love and attention and detail they put into it, and everything has to be precise. Everything must be as close to perfect as possible. Otherwise, any gaps in it, everybody will see it. And it'll be an incomplete and inaccurate piece of furniture. So I just think that watching these, my uncles work on this, it just really helped me realize the importance of seeking precision versus perfection. And I just think that's the healthy journey to go on.
Good point. Kasha, you're on mute, so take yourself off mute and share your wonderful thoughts with us.
So first of all, it was quite amazing to watch you guys when Gigi was speaking. I love the frozen expression on everybody's faces. And I would like to refer right now to what Mark was talking about, the furniture. I graduated art school, and one of the classes was actually people building those furniture. So I've been seeing and observing the process, which in creating furniture and homes, you really have to be precise to the almost like nanomillimeter. And on the other hand, we had another class. I was studying sculpturing in wood, and then another class, it was, I think, I hope this is Gobelin or tapestry. I'm using the Google Translator. When people, they take the thread and they create like pictures with threads, and then to contrast those two with Gobelins, you feel like you don't need to be so precise, yet you do have to be precise. You're on the first sight, you feel like, oh, those are just threads. But again, you have to thread them the way so they don't shrink parts of the whole piece. There's a lot of engineering coming to that as well. So I think this really reflects into our lives. And as I joined this call late, I'm sorry, I started listening to you, I just realized that I thought that my husband was this perfectionist in everything, and he's often annoying me how perfect and clean and everything has to be organized. But then I also know that I'm the same way, but maybe in different regions of our life and our home. I like my clothes in the closet organized. I like my socks folded together. I like my underwear fold. And so when you go to your drawer, you can pick up the one that is the best one for the day. And then like in the kitchen, when I do organizing my stuff, spices, everything has to be organized, especially with ingredients, because which socks, underwear, and spices are ingredients. Because when you get into that space, you need to know where you go to be quick for those simple moves. And at the same time, I do appreciate how my perfectionism, it's complementing my husband's perfectionism and vice versa, because without each other support in those annoying parts of us wanting everything organized, we actually make our life more simple. And then I guess I hope my husband appreciate me being so pain on the behind, and vice versa. I do love that my husband is so organized in those arenas that I'm like, oh, I don't care, or I'm lacking those skills. Thank you.
Awesome. Wolfgang, and then Miriam.
I like the analogy of the carpenter. I mean, I make woodwork, and what comes actually from before actually touching the wood is to take the right wood, to know which wood, because you cannot take any wood. Wood is not wood. So you have to know which wood behaves in temperature and humidity, how. So you can make the perfect art when it's not the right wood. A couple of weeks later, it looks different. It has gaps. So that was when you said that with the gaps, you have to work precise. You can be the most precise if you don't have the foundation, if you don't have the right wood. If the wood is not cut in the right moment, there is wisdom to cut wood with the moon cycles. It's wisdom to know how long wood needs to. I mean, wood is a perfect analogy that actually being precise, being perfect, is much more than actually the act we are working at. It's like the surrounding, the environment, it's everything. So it's so much detail in it. And I think it's connected. It's connected to community. That knowledge is freely given from one generation to the other, which requires that another generation is that's there at all. So otherwise the knowledge is like extracted. So this is it goes actually to be, it's so perfectly aligned out of some things we cannot influence. It's actually about to surrender that it can be perfect, to get out of the way, to allow things happening, and they are perfect. Thank you very much for the topic. I will be here another 2 minutes, Walter, and then I will go. Thank you very much for listening and for everything you share. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you for your wisdom you're sharing with us. Miriam, what's coming up for you?
Well, everybody's give you a good nuggets of wisdom. But what I was just thinking as you were speaking was Wolfgang was talking about the time. And now looking back, I actually think that, as a young person, because we are ignorant and we don't have, the knowledge and the experiences, so we are seeking perfectionism because we think that's the efficient way of doing things. So, and I think as we get older, or maybe perhaps we can teach that to our children, we become wiser. So with the wisdom comes the patience. With the wisdom comes, that you let go of that ego, you let go of that, everything has to be my way and perfect way, because I think my way is the perfect way. And the other thing that, Mark was mentioning, I liked seeking precision. So, and precision is what? Precision is a skill. Precision is art. And that's something perhaps that, I'm looking from the glass of, like, because I have this academy. I want to teach people through the glass of what we can teach as a leader. This is a leadership, meeting. What we can teach. Precision is a skill that we could teach, perhaps. This is something that we could do. And a danger to seeking perfectionism is obsession. We became obsessed about, certain things being certain ways, which completely, would put us throw us into another path. And we don't want to be, and my experience was like kind of what when Kasia was saying, younger in my 20s and, early ages, I had to have everything, perfect in my home, put everything, in the place. And, I would not go to bed, unless everything is done. As I grew, wiser, so it didn't matter anymore. I still had, my bathroom and the kitchen, clean and everything. But if my clothes are still on the seat, it didn't matter because there was some more important priorities in my life. I was, studying in a business school. That was, completing my task in my school was more important than, like putting, these clothes away. So those things changed. Those priorities changed. And then it's kind of interesting that what Wolfgang said, then you surrender to certain things, you change yourself, you accept certain things, which it was not your habit before. And that comes again, I think, is being wiser and, growing and evolving, like, again, goes back to the progress.
Some really good points there. And I think Mark said, I've got something to say, but I'll let Mark go first.
Yeah, Walter, you can wrap us up. That's great. I wanted to add that I really love this idea of being perfectly imperfect. I just want to come back to that for a quick moment. And I think it ties really well into what you were just saying a moment ago, Miriam, that it creates space for acceptance of the imperfections, which sets up the space for growth. It also creates space for forgiveness, right, of our imperfections, forgiveness for our shortcomings, which again creates space for growth. And in that space for growth, it sets up an opportunity for you to self-transcend yourself in a healthy way, right? Where you're not beating yourself up for everything that you're not, but you're thriving and striving to improve on areas and seek areas of growth and opportunity for expansion. And so rather than it being a negative, those imperfections become the positive because you're identifying the areas where you can improve to ever evolve towards a more accurate and precise version of yourself in the way that you want to express yourself. So, and it's back to this idea of progress that where we started this call. That sets up a healthy environment for progress without the need for this ego delusion of this ideal of perfection, but you still create an environment where dissatisfaction is still present. So you can still progress because of that dissatisfaction with the imperfections, but not from a place of beating yourself up, but from a place of excitement about finding new areas where there's opportunity to grow. And the last thing I just want to say on this is really near and dear to my heart, because in my family, and I'll just be a little vulnerable here and just share, I watched my mom. She was a perfectionist. And I loved her for it. She could make incredible things happen with next to nothing. And I so took it for granted as a kid that that's just the way it was. Everybody lived this perfect Martha Stewart life. And it was just incredible. She could go to a garage sale and find some old piece of furniture, bring it back to the house, and boop, 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 like before you know it, snap your fingers, and it's like this perfect antique piece of furniture. And it was just so amazing to me. So I want to highlight that I think that is incredibly valuable to desire to seek this, because this forces us and it gives us opportunities to grow in these areas where we can improve, but do it in a healthy way. Because then sadly, in my mom's case, because she saw perfection, it made a massive mental toll on her mental health. And it led to a really deep sense of unhappiness in her life, which is why I personally rejected the idea of perfectionism, but I so admire it in her at the same time. And that's why I'm so excited about this particular call today, because this idea of seeking progress versus perfection, seeking precision versus this perfect ideal, and enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. For me, that's the best of both worlds. You still get that perfect or that progressive realization of that worthy ideal that we're all seeking, while still being able to maintain a healthy mental state. And I think if we can give anybody a gift in that, who is a perfectionist, from this video today, it's be kind to yourself. Perfection is impossible. That end of the rainbow, as you said, Walter, is that pot of gold. You're never going to get it. And don't drive yourself crazy getting it, but don't stop chasing it either, because that's the fun of life. I'm complete.
Yeah, I think I think we've just barely touched the surface of this topic. Um, as I'm thinking, and 10 years of coaching high performance athletes and executives and people that are there, what I often find is that perfectionism, first of all, what in the heck is that? Right? If we were to go around the room, everybody would have their own little definition of what perfectionism meant to them. And I think that what I really find quite often is that the pursuit of perfectionism sometimes is the pursuit of something that we feel is lacking, because it's something outside of ourselves, something that, right? And I think that the one thing that I think we forgot to mention is that, and I know, because I live very much in flow. Anybody that knows me, I'm always looking to what's flowing. I struggle with things that aren't flowing. Yeah, okay, that's not flowing. So I'm always looking to kind of progress forward. If it was, I always think of that song by was it Robert Cray, about somewhere down the crazy river? How'd I get here? I don't know. The wind just carried me here, right? I always think about that. And I always think about back when I was 21 and I was in Arizona. I went down for a sales thing, and I remember hearing that song and driving the Arizona at night, and the warm wind coming in. And I was just thinking, wow, that's kind of a cool feeling, right? And I realized that that's when I feel really joyful, right? And it's really interesting because there's so many things that are possible. And it's interesting. I have a loving wife who has great ideas, and I get a lot of shoulds. You should do this, you should do that. And one day I actually stopped her and I said, no, I want to tell you something. I wake up every day with the knowledge that today anything is possible. The biggest challenge is the only person that gets in the way is me. There's no shortage of things that I should be doing, right? There's so many things I could do, but one of the things that I've really discovered about when you're just going is that your perfectionism may be a target. That target can change. The goal should be who do I need to be today to be working towards that? Because we often disregard the now for the future that never comes, because it's always now. Ever since we started doing this, every time we come here, it's always now, right? It's like there is no over there, right? And so I think that learning to really live in the present moment, it's important to have plans, it's important to have vision for yourself and goals and what have you. Those are important. But if you are not striving towards those goals joyfully, and if you are endeavoring to force things to happen, you're going to make yourself miserable and those around you miserable. Because people can sense that. We all know that. You ever been around somebody who's just really self-righteous or really in a self-pity? Before they even open their mouth, you feel the energetic, like, ooh, what's going on here? Right? You already know something's going to happen, right? They're either going to tell you why they're right and you're wrong, or they're going to tell you why the world just isn't going their way. And it's interesting because anything that we see in other people is because we recognize it. Right? We sometimes are the self-righteous or the self-pity, woe's me. I know I just had one about 2 days ago. I had a little pity party. And then I realized, man, it's like, ooh, I'm in a pity party. Wow. Okay. It's like, oh, I must be just a fun to be around, right? So what did I do? I went for a drive. I just took myself out for a drive and just kind of hung out with those thoughts and went and bought this incredible hat. Right. And it's interesting, when I went there, I actually had an incredible conversation with a lady who had just overcome cancer. Her husband had as well. And they had also lost a son and daughter. And I just, you know what? I was no longer in a pity party. I realized that life today is a once in a lifetime deal. It's never going to come back again. So if you, it's interesting. I think Sade said there's a line in a song, would I disappoint my future if I stayed? Right? Would we disappoint our future if we just chose to be happy today? And what if we decided that, you know what? Today I'm just going to go follow my flow, follow my joy. One of the best advices that I have gotten from my mentor, he told me once, Walt, follow your joy. That's all he said to me. And I think that that's really important. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything ever. Like you don't just sit on the mountain. Right? No. But you start to really realize that perhaps progress in your relationships with people, choosing connection over being right, moving progress in our perception with ourselves. I have a lot of young goaltenders that when they have incredible days, it's incredible. Hey, I got a shutout. Sometimes I get late night calls. Can I talk to you a bit? Hey, I just got scored on 6 times and they pulled me, and he's talking. You could tell they got the big L on the forehead. So I gotta say, oh, this is a great opportunity to practice self-compassion. What does that mean? Well, you guys, you're on the road to mastery. This is it, right? So you get to learn some stuff, right? And, oh, okay. And then by the time we're off the phone, they feel a little bit better, right? So yeah, so those are the things. And just before we wrap up here, I know that Kasha has something to say, so I want to give Kasha a moment. But just note, Kasha, that we're right on the tail end of it. We've hit the hour. So if you have some parting thoughts, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, as I was listening to you, I was thinking about this perfection that could be our goal, but in the middle of the process, it could be not only a target, but the trap. So let's do not trap ourselves into the perfection, and as everything, we need balance.
Yeah, you'll find that balance is a misnomer. I think sometimes people get so focused on balance that they become unbalanced, right? We have a target. We have the goal is who we are today, what we want to feel. Out of that, our intentions set. What's the actions that we're going to achieve today? That's our intention, right? And I know a lot of my goaltenders, from the pros to the 12-year-olds, it's all the same intention. Stop the puck, be resilient, have fun. That's simple. We usually, as humans, we have so much we get obsessed. We have all these different thoughts and this and that. And I'll tell you one thing is that obsession, though, can lead us to the success that we want. Because I've heard it said that there's three things, right? There's interest, there's discipline, and there's obsession. Oh, actually, not discipline, it's commitment. So we have interest, we have commitment, and we have obsession. And yeah, and I find that quite often the people that I get, the high performers, are obsessed. All I've got to do with that is turn that obsession from the outcome to the process, to who they need to be, right? And I do that by giving them rituals and routines that helps them to be at their highest level of energy at the start of the day or at the start of their game, so that they can meet the intention that they want to meet in that day, which is going to lead them down the path to where they want to go. But commitment will take you so far, because commitment, there'll be commitment on it, but there will always be commitment. If you're so focused on commitment, after a while, it can become an obligation. Obsession is very much in line with inspiration, and there's a fine line in there, right? And I think that fine line is where I say we just started to touch the tip of the iceberg. But I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank everybody. This topic is really like, I want to let everybody know that our truth may not be the truth, but everybody here has their truth right now. And I always believe that we're in our power when we can be present, speak and act our truth, and then have an open mindset, a growth and learning mindset, so you can let some of the other stuff in, and then go try it, right? I always tell people, be skeptical of me, be skeptical of Mark, be skeptical of everybody here, not critical. Be curious. Hey, I wonder if what that one thing that one person said is true. Go try it out in your life. Knowledge is the knowingness of things. Wisdom is the appropriate application of that knowledge. Our goal is not just to know a bunch of stuff. Our goal is to go and be able to apply it to see if it's going to support us on our journey to be great, not only great leaders of others, but ourselves. Because in the end, they always say the world isn't as we see it, the world is as we are. So if you want to have joy in your life, wow, it starts from the inside out, right? And I love what somebody once said about this mastermind. They love it because, oh, every time I come to any of Walter's masterminds, it's okay to be myself. Okay. So I don't know. I guess I guess maybe if we can learn to be who we truly are, not who we think we are, that gives people permission to be who they are. And before we know it, we start to kind of glue to each other, just like we do here. And then we start to create a little group, like that guy that's dancing by himself. And all of a sudden, other people come and dance. And before we know it, we got this great success posse. And perhaps that's what we're endeavoring to do, right? Is to help people to be more aware and influence themselves and influence others, so that we could have greater joy in our lives, right? So, Mark, I'll leave the last word to you.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. I just really love the way you wrap that up. And for me, I just want to summarize the way I interpreted it, which is be obsessed with the process, right? Towards progress, with a desire to be as precise as possible in how you want to expand and manifest and show up in the world, whether it's hockey, which is a lot of your clients, Walter, or entrepreneurship, you know, having a social impact in the world, whatever it is that inspires you, get it obsessed about the process.
So, obsessed with the process is what I confess.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful week, everyone. It's great having everyone here. We'll see you next week.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.